She left home for 5 minutes and was never seen again. 5 minutes. That's all it took for Sarah Mitchell to vanish without a trace. 5 minutes to step outside her front door on an ordinary Tuesday morning and disappear from existence as if she'd never been there at all. No witnesses. No evidence. No body. Just an empty street, a half-finished cup of coffee still warm on her kitchen counter, and a mystery that would haunt an entire community for years to come. But here's what makes this case truly terrifying. Sarah knew something was wrong. In the days before her disappearance, she told 3 different people that she felt watched, that someone was following her, that she was afraid. And every single one of them dismissed her concerns as paranoia. Now, those same people live with a question that torments them every single day. Could they have saved her? If you're fascinated by true crime mysteries and unexplained disappearances, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because this case will take you down a rabbit hole so deep, so disturbing, that you'll question everything you think you know about the people living on your own street. Let's go back to the beginning. September 14th, 2021. A Tuesday morning in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood Heights, just outside Portland, Oregon. Sarah Mitchell was 28 years old, a graphic designer who worked from home, and by all accounts, she was living a perfectly ordinary life. She had a small circle of close friends, a loving family who lived 2 hours away, and a routine that rarely varied. Tuesdays were grocery days. She'd walk 3 blocks to the corner market around 9:30 in the morning, pick up essentials for the week, and be back home within 45 minutes. But on this particular Tuesday, Sarah never made it to the store. Her neighbor, Marcus Chin, was getting into his car at 9:28 that morning when he saw Sarah step out of her front door. He waved. She waved back, offered a quick smile, and started walking down the sidewalk toward the market. Marcus drove off, thinking nothing of it. Why would he? It was just another Tuesday. Just another normal morning in a neighborhood where nothing ever happened. Except 45 minutes later, when Marcus returned home, he noticed something odd. Sarah's front door was still ajar, exactly as she'd left it. The screen door was propped open with a small package that had been delivered earlier that morning. This struck Marcus as strange because Sarah was meticulous about security. She always locked her doors, even when stepping outside for just a moment. Marcus didn't think much of it initially. He went inside his own house, unpacked his things, started his workday. But by early afternoon, that open door was still bothering him. So at 2:15, he walked over and knocked. No answer. He called out Sarah's name. Nothing. The door swung open easily under his knock, and he could see directly into her living room. Everything looked normal, neat, undisturbed. Her laptop was open on the coffee table, screen dark but still powered on. Her phone was sitting right next to it. Her phone. This is where Marcus's concern turned into genuine worry. Because nobody, and I mean nobody in this day and age, goes anywhere without their phone. Not to the grocery store. Not anywhere. Marcus called the police. Officer Jennifer Rodriguez arrived at 3:05 that afternoon. She conducted a preliminary check of the house, noted the strange circumstances, but initially categorized this as a possible voluntary departure. After all, Sarah was an adult. She had every right to leave her home. Maybe she'd gone for a spontaneous walk. Maybe she'd met a friend. Maybe she'd simply forgotten her phone for once. But then Officer Rodriguez spoke to Sarah's best friend, Amanda Torres, who lived 6 blocks away. Amanda told her something that changed everything. She told her that Sarah had called her the previous Thursday night, 4 days before she disappeared, and said something that made Amanda's blood run cold. Sarah had said, "Amanda, I think someone's been in my house." Not breaking in. Not forcing entry. Been in. Past tense. As if someone had already gained access, had already violated her space, and had left without taking anything, without leaving obvious signs of intrusion. Sarah told Amanda that things were slightly out of place. A drawer in her bedroom that she always kept closed was open just a crack. A photo frame on her mantel had been turned at an angle. Her spare house key, which she kept in a dish by the back door, was in a slightly different position than she remembered. Small things. Tiny details that most people would dismiss as their own forgetfulness. But Sarah was certain. Someone had been inside. Amanda had asked the obvious question, "Did you call the police?" Sarah had hesitated, then said no. Because what would she tell them? That a drawer was open? That a picture frame had been moved an inch? She said she felt foolish even mentioning it to Amanda, but she needed to tell someone. She needed someone else to know, just in case something happened. Just in case something happened. Those words echoed in Amanda's mind as she sat across from Officer Rodriguez, tears streaming down her face, realizing that she hadn't taken her best friend seriously enough. That she'd offered comfort and reassurance when maybe, just maybe, she should have insisted Sarah file a police report. Should have gone over there herself. Should have done something, anything, other than what she did, which was tell Sarah she was probably just stressed and needed to get more sleep. Before we continue with what the police discovered next, I need you to do something for me. If you're finding this case as chilling as I am, hit that like button right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your reminder that we cover the most mysterious and unexplained disappearances every single week. You don't want to miss what's coming next in this story. The police investigation escalated rapidly once Amanda shared what Sarah had told her. Detective Michael Brennan took over the case within 24 hours of the initial report. He was a 20-year veteran of the Portland Police Department with a specialty in missing persons cases, and he immediately recognized the red flags in this situation. First, he ordered a complete forensic examination of Sarah's home. What they found was simultaneously everything and nothing. The house was pristine. No signs of forced entry. No signs of struggle. No evidence of foul play whatsoever. But the forensics team did find something interesting. Trace evidence of cleaning solution on the back door handle and door frame. Fresh cleaning solution. Applied within the last 72 hours based on the chemical composition and evaporation patterns. Here's why that mattered. Sarah's cleaning schedule was predictable. She deep cleaned her house every Sunday. This was Tuesday. The back door wouldn't have been cleaned again until the following Sunday. So why was there fresh cleaning solution on that specific door handle? Detective Brennan had a theory, and it was one that made everyone working the case deeply uncomfortable. Someone had been in Sarah's house, just as she suspected, and that someone had been careful. Careful enough to wear gloves. Careful enough to clean up after themselves. Careful enough to make it look like nothing had happened at all. But they'd made one mistake. They'd overcleaned. They'd applied fresh solution to remove any trace of their presence, not realizing that the cleaning solution itself would become the evidence. The second piece of evidence was even more disturbing. When the forensics team examined Sarah's laptop, they found that someone had accessed it remotely 6 times over the previous 2 weeks. The access points were traced to an IP address that bounced through multiple proxy servers, making it virtually impossible to track the actual source. Whoever had accessed her computer knew what they were doing. They were sophisticated, deliberate, patient. What had they been looking at? Sarah's calendar, her emails, her social media messages. They'd been learning her routine, learning her schedule, learning everything about her daily life. They'd been preparing. Detective Brennan interviewed everyone in Sarah's life. Her family described her as cautious and level-headed. Her co-workers said she'd seemed distracted the week before her disappearance but hadn't mentioned anything specific. Her ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago had a solid alibi and no apparent motive. Every lead seemed to evaporate under scrutiny. But then they talked to Sarah's therapist, Dr. Ellen Whitmore. Now, therapist-patient confidentiality is a serious legal protection, but Dr. Whitmore was able to share limited information given the circumstances of Sarah's disappearance and the clear danger she was potentially in. What she shared made the case even more mysterious. Sarah had been seeing Dr. Whitmore for anxiety for about 6 months. Nothing severe, just general life stress and some difficulty sleeping. But in their session 2 weeks before Sarah disappeared, she'd mentioned something that Dr. Whitmore found significant. Sarah had talked about a strange interaction she'd had at a coffee shop. A man had approached her, seemingly by coincidence, and struck up a conversation. He'd mentioned that he was also a graphic designer, that he also lived in Maplewood Heights, that he'd seen her at the corner market. Sarah had found the conversation pleasant enough in the moment, but afterward, something about it had bothered her. The man had known things. Specific things. Things that you wouldn't know about someone unless you've been paying very close attention to them. He knew she preferred oat milk in her coffee. He knew she typically shopped on Tuesday mornings. He knew she worked from home. He even made a casual reference to her habit of wearing noise-canceling headphones while she worked, something he claimed he'd noticed through her front window when walking past a house. At the time, Sarah had rationalized these details. Maplewood Heights was a small neighborhood. People noticed things. But the more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable it made her feel. Because how many times would someone have to walk past a house, at just the right moment, to notice she wore headphones while working? How many times would they have been watching her at the market to know her shopping schedule? Dr. Whitmore had asked Sarah if she'd gotten the man's name. Sarah said she had, but when she tried to remember it during their session, she drew a blank. She thought it might have been David. Or Daniel. Something common. She hadn't written it down because, at the time, she'd thought it was just a friendly conversation with a neighbor. The police never found anyone matching that description in the neighborhood. They canvassed every resident. Showed Sarah's photo to employees at the coffee shop. No one remembered seeing her with an unidentified man. No one named David or Daniel in the area matched what little description Sarah had provided to her therapist. It was as if the man didn't exist. As if he'd been a ghost. 3 days after Sarah's disappearance, her credit cards and bank accounts showed no activity. Her phone remained powered off, its last known location being her own living room. There were no ATM withdrawals, no purchases, no digital footprint whatsoever. She had essentially vanished from both the physical and digital world simultaneously. But here's where the case took an even darker turn. On day 4, a hiker found something in Forest Park, about 12 miles from Sarah's house. It was a small item, partially buried under leaves near a rarely used trail. A silver bracelet with a distinctive charm, a tiny paint palette, which Sarah's mother immediately identified as belonging to her daughter. Sarah never took that bracelet off. She'd worn it every single day since her mother gave it to her on her 21st birthday. The police descended on that area of the park with search dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and teams of volunteers. They searched for 3 solid days. They found nothing else. No clothing. No evidence of a struggle. No indication that Sarah had ever been in that location. Just the bracelet, placed there deliberately, carefully positioned where it would eventually be found. Detective Brennan knew what this meant. This was a message. Someone wanted them to find the bracelet. Someone wanted them to know that Sarah hadn't simply walked away from her life. That she'd been taken. But the message was also a taunt. We know where she is, and you don't. We're in control here, not you. Let me pause here and ask you to think about something. Imagine being Sarah's family. Imagine the agony of knowing that someone out there has answers, that someone knows exactly what happened to your daughter, your sister, your best friend, and they're choosing to play games with that information. If you can't imagine a worse nightmare than that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we don't let these stories die. We keep asking questions. We keep searching for answers. As weeks turned into months, the investigation continued but leads dried up. The media coverage that had been intense initially began to fade. Sarah's face on missing person posters around the neighborhood slowly became part of the background. Just another piece of paper on a bulletin board that people stopped really seeing. But Detective Brennan didn't stop. He couldn't. Because there were too many things about this case that didn't make sense, too many pieces that didn't fit together properly. Why would someone go through such elaborate preparation, such careful stalking and planning, only to make Sarah disappear in broad daylight from a residential street where anyone could have seen something? Why leave the bracelet in Forest Park as a clue but leave nothing else? Why hadn't there been any ransom demand, any communication, any apparent motive? Brennan developed a theory, and it was one that made even seasoned investigators uncomfortable. He believed that whoever took Sarah had done this before. That the level of sophistication, the patience, the careful planning, all indicated someone with experience. Someone who had successfully made others disappear and had never been caught. He began looking at cold cases. Missing persons from other jurisdictions, other states, other years. He was looking for patterns. Similar circumstances. Other women who disappeared after reporting feeling watched or followed. Other cases where victims had mentioned strange encounters with men who seemed to know too much about them. What he found was terrifying. Over the previous 8 years, across 4 different states in the Pacific Northwest, there had been 11 disappearances that shared striking similarities with Sarah's case. Women between the ages of 25 and 35. All lived alone. All worked from home or had flexible schedules. All had mentioned to friends or family members, in the weeks before they disappeared, that they felt like someone was watching them. And in 6 of those cases, a piece of jewelry belonging to the victim had been found in a remote location weeks or months after they vanished, but no other evidence was ever discovered. None of those women had ever been found. Not alive. Not dead. Just gone, as if they'd been erased from existence. The FBI got involved at this point. This was no longer just a local missing persons case. This was potentially a serial predator operating across multiple state lines, someone who had been doing this for years, someone who was very, very good at not getting caught. Let me tell you about one of those other cases because the similarities are impossible to ignore. 4 years before Sarah disappeared, a woman named Jennifer Ross vanished from her apartment in Eugene, Oregon. Jennifer was 29, worked from home as a freelance writer, and had told her sister that she thought someone had been in her apartment while she was out. Small things were moved. Barely noticeable. Her sister had told her she was being paranoid. 3 weeks later, Jennifer left her apartment to walk to a nearby pharmacy. It was a 10-minute walk. She never came back. Her apartment door was found open. Her phone was on her kitchen counter. 2 months later, hikers found her watch in the Willamette National Forest. Nothing else was ever found. Then there was Monica Chen from Bellingham, Washington, who disappeared 3 years ago under almost identical circumstances. And Rebecca Hartman from Boise, Idaho, 2 years before that. And on, case after case, stretching back nearly a decade, all following the same pattern. All unsolved. All terrifying. The FBI created a task force. They called it Operation Phantom, because that's what their suspect was. A phantom. Someone who could move through communities unnoticed, could study victims for weeks or months, could make them disappear without leaving evidence, and could taunt law enforcement by leaving just enough clues to let them know it was him, but never enough to actually catch him. Now I need to tell you something that's going to make this case even more disturbing. About 7 months after Sarah disappeared, Detective Brennan received a letter. Not an email, not a phone call, but an actual physical letter, mailed from a post office in Seattle with no return address. The letter was brief. Typed on plain white paper with no identifying characteristics. It said, "You're looking in the wrong places. Sarah isn't lost. She's exactly where she's supposed to be. Where they all are. And you'll never find her because you don't understand what you're looking for." The letter was analyzed by forensic document examiners. The paper was common printer paper available at any office supply store. The envelope was generic. No DNA. No fingerprints. The postmark showed it had been mailed from a high-traffic post office in downtown Seattle where there were no security cameras covering the mail drop box. Another dead end. Another taunt. But here's what that letter told Detective Brennan. Whoever took Sarah was watching the investigation. They knew what leads the police were pursuing. They knew what the task force was focused on. And they were confident enough, arrogant enough, to make contact. To essentially say, "I'm smarter than you, and you're never going to catch me." I want you to subscribe right now if you haven't already, because we're about to get into the theories about who this person might be and what might have happened to Sarah and the other victims. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because you need to hear what comes next. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit developed a profile of the suspect. They believed they were looking for a white male, likely between 35 and 55 years old. Someone with a stable job that allowed for flexible hours and frequent travel between Pacific Northwest states. Someone who was organized, intelligent, and meticulous. Someone who likely appeared completely normal to friends, family, and coworkers. The kind of person who would never raise suspicion. They believed this person had a specific type. Women who lived alone, who worked from home, who had predictable routines. Women who were somewhat isolated, not because they were antisocial, but because their lifestyles naturally limited their daily interactions with others. The behavioral analysts believed the suspect spent weeks, possibly months, surveilling each victim before making a move. Learning everything about them. Their schedules, their habits, their fears. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, methodical, and deeply personal. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The analysts believed that the suspect didn't act alone during the actual abductions. The logistics of making someone disappear in broad daylight from a residential area without anyone seeing anything suggested coordination. 2 people, minimum, working together. One to approach the victim, one to have a vehicle ready. Quick, efficient, practiced. This meant there might be 2 predators working together. Or possibly more. A network of people who shared this same dark compulsion and who helped each other carry out these abductions. The letter that Detective Brennan received supported this theory. Where they all are, it had said. Not where she is. They. Plural. Suggesting that all the victims were in the same location. Together. Hidden somewhere that law enforcement had never thought to look. The investigation into Sarah's disappearance is still active today, more than 3 years after she vanished. The FBI task force remains operational, still searching for connections between the 11 cases, still analyzing evidence, still hoping for a breakthrough. Sarah's family has never given up hope. Her mother, Patricia Mitchell, has become an advocate for missing persons, particularly those whose disappearances don't generate significant media attention. She's spoken at conferences, worked with lawmakers to improve how missing persons cases are handled, and has kept Sarah's case in the public eye through social media and local news interviews. Amanda Torres, Sarah's best friend, says she thinks about those 5 minutes every single day. 5 minutes when Sarah walked out her front door on an ordinary Tuesday morning. 5 minutes when someone, somewhere on that street, must have seen something but didn't realize what they were witnessing. 5 minutes that changed everything. Marcus Chin, the neighbor who reported Sarah missing, still lives in the same house. He says he looks at Sarah's front door every single day and thinks about that moment when he waved to her. That last moment when everything was still normal. He says he wishes he'd said something more than just a wave. Wishes he'd asked if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she felt safe. But how could he have known? How could anyone have known? Here's what we know for certain about that Tuesday morning. Sarah left her house at approximately 9:28. She was seen by Marcus Chin walking in the direction of the corner market. The market is exactly 3 blocks from her house. It's a straight walk down residential streets with multiple houses on both sides. Someone on that route should have seen her. But when police canvassed the neighborhood, not a single person reported seeing Sarah after Marcus saw her leave. This suggests that something happened very quickly, within the first block of her walk. Something that made her disappear between her house and wherever she was going. In a matter of minutes, on a Tuesday morning, in a quiet neighborhood, Sarah Mitchell ceased to exist in the physical world. The theories about what happened vary wildly. Some investigators believe she was forced into a vehicle. Others think she might have been lured into a house, possibly by someone she knew or recognized from the neighborhood. The most disturbing theory is that she was approached by someone she'd been conditioned to trust through previous encounters, someone who'd carefully built a false sense of familiarity over time, and she went with them willingly, not realizing until it was too late that she was in danger. There's something I need to talk about that's deeply troubling about this case and cases like it. We live in a society where people, particularly women, are often told they're being paranoid when they express concerns about being followed or watched. Sarah told people she felt unsafe. She told them someone had been in her house. She told them she was scared. And the people who loved her with good intentions reassured her that everything was fine, that she was overthinking things, that she needed to relax. But Sarah wasn't paranoid. She was right. Her instincts were screaming at her that something was wrong, and those instincts were correct. But our society has conditioned us to doubt those instincts, to dismiss them as anxiety or irrational fear, to prioritize being polite and not making a fuss over protecting ourselves. How many of the 11 women in these connected cases tried to get help before they disappeared? How many of them told someone they were afraid? How many of them were dismissed, told they were being silly, told that nothing bad was going to happen? This is why Sarah's case matters. This is why we keep talking about it. Not just to find out what happened to her, though that remains desperately important, but also to remind people that when someone tells you they feel unsafe, you believe them. You take them seriously. You help them take steps to protect themselves. Because the cost of being wrong, of dismissing legitimate fear as paranoia, is something that Sarah's family, Amanda, Marcus, and everyone who knew her have to live with every single day. So where is Sarah Mitchell now? That's the question that haunts everyone involved in this case. Is she alive? The statistical probability decreases with each passing day, each passing month, each passing year. But families of missing persons will tell you that not knowing is its own special kind of torture. Because without a body, without concrete evidence, there's always a tiny sliver of hope. And that hope keeps you trapped in a moment that never ends, waiting for an answer that might never come. Some investigators believe Sarah and the other victims are being held somewhere. That the person or people responsible for these abductions have created some kind of location where they keep their victims. This theory is supported by the fact that no bodies have ever been found, despite extensive searches in areas where personal items were discovered. Other investigators believe the victims were killed shortly after being taken, and that their bodies are disposed of in ways that make them virtually impossible to find. Perhaps buried in remote wilderness areas, or placed in locations where natural decomposition would eliminate evidence quickly. And then there are the investigators who have the most disturbing theory of all. That these victims are still alive, but living under such controlled circumstances that they have no ability to escape or call for help. That they're being held by someone who's sophisticated enough to keep them hidden in plain sight, perhaps moving them periodically to avoid detection, perhaps keeping them in a location so remote or so unusual that law enforcement wouldn't think to search there. Detective Brennan, who retired from the Portland Police Department last year but continues to consult on Sarah's case, believes the answer lies in finding the first victim. He's convinced that these abductions didn't start with Jennifer Ross 4 years before Sarah. He thinks there are earlier cases, possibly going back 15 or 20 years, that haven't been connected to this pattern yet. He believes that if they can find the first victim, they can understand the motivation, the methodology, the evolution of these crimes. And maybe, just maybe, that will lead them to whoever is responsible. I'm going to share something with you now that's not widely known about Sarah's case. About 2 years after her disappearance, someone created a tribute website for her. It had photos, memories from friends and family, updates about the investigation. It was heartfelt and tastefully done. Patricia, Sarah's mother, was grateful that someone had taken the time to create such a memorial. But then the FBI's cybercrimes unit discovered something chilling. The website was being accessed regularly from IP addresses that traced back to areas near where other victims had disappeared. Not Sarah's hometown, but near Jennifer Ross's last known location. Near Monica Chen's apartment. Near multiple crime scenes across multiple states. Someone involved in these disappearances was visiting Sarah's memorial website. Reading about her. Looking at her photos. Perhaps reliving what they'd done. The website was being monitored, turned into a honeypot to try to identify the person accessing it, but the IP addresses kept changing, kept bouncing through proxy servers, kept evading every attempt to trace them back to a physical location. The website is still up. Sarah's mother insists on keeping it active, both as a genuine memorial to her daughter and as bait, hoping that whoever keeps visiting it will make a mistake, will slip up just once, will give investigators the lead they need to finally break this case open. Here's what keeps me up at night about Sarah's disappearance. The randomness of it. The fact that she did everything right. She was cautious. She paid attention to her instincts. She told people she was afraid. She lived in a safe neighborhood. She disappeared in daylight. And none of that mattered. None of that protected her. Because the truth is, when someone is determined enough, patient enough, and skilled enough, they can make anyone disappear. The comfort we feel in our daily routines, the sense of safety we have in familiar places, is largely an illusion. Most of us are protected not by our own security measures, but by the simple fact that we haven't attracted the attention of someone who wishes us harm. Sarah attracted that attention somehow. Maybe it was random. Maybe she just happened to cross paths with a predator who selected her for reasons we'll never understand. Or maybe there was something specific about her, her routine, her lifestyle, her appearance, that made her a target. We don't know. And that's terrifying because it means it could happen to anyone. Before we wrap up, I want to tell you about something that happened just 6 months ago that might, and I emphasize might, be connected to Sarah's case. A woman in Tacoma, Washington, contacted police to report a strange encounter. She said a man had approached her at a grocery store and struck up a conversation. He seemed to know things about her, her schedule, where she lived. Unlike Sarah, this woman immediately felt uncomfortable and cut the conversation short. She left the store, drove home a different route than usual, and then called the police. The police took her report seriously. They reviewed security footage from the grocery store. They identified the man she'd described. And here's where it gets interesting. That man had been seen on security cameras at 3 other grocery stores in the area over the previous 2 months, always approaching women who were shopping alone, always engaging them in conversation, always asking subtle questions about their routines and schedules. Police tracked him down and brought him in for questioning. He claimed he was just lonely and trying to make friends. That he was awkward socially and didn't realize he was making people uncomfortable. He had no criminal record. No outstanding warrants. Nothing that would justify arresting him. But Detective Brennan heard about this case and drove up to Tacoma to interview the man himself. He showed him photos of Sarah, Jennifer, Monica, and the other victims. Asked if he'd ever seen them. The man said no. Said he'd never heard about any of these cases. But Detective Brennan noticed something. When he showed the man Sarah's photo specifically, there was a micro-expression, a tiny flicker of recognition, that lasted maybe half a second before the man's face returned to neutral. It wasn't enough for an arrest. It wasn't even enough for a warrant. But Detective Brennan is convinced that man knows something. Whether he's directly involved or knows someone who is, Brennan believes there's a connection. The man is being monitored. His movements are being tracked. Investigators are watching and waiting, hoping he'll lead them to something, anything, that can break these cases open. So here we are, 3 years later, and Sarah Mitchell is still missing. Her case remains open. Her family still waits for answers. And somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened to her. Someone knows where she is. Someone holds the key to solving not just Sarah's disappearance, but potentially 10 other cases just like hers. If you have any information about Sarah Mitchell's disappearance, or about any of the other cases I've mentioned, please contact the FBI's tip line. Even the smallest detail, something that seemed insignificant at the time, could be the piece that finally solves this puzzle. A strange encounter. An unusual person in your neighborhood. A vehicle that didn't belong. Anything that struck you as odd, even years ago, could matter. And if you're watching this and you feel like someone is watching you, following you, paying too much attention to your routine, please take those feelings seriously. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Tell people. Make noise. Make a fuss. Don't worry about seeming paranoid. Your safety is worth more than anyone's opinion of you. Before you go, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. We cover cases like Sarah's every week, keeping these stories alive, keeping pressure on investigators, reminding the public that these victims haven't been forgotten. Your subscription helps these videos reach more people, which means more eyes looking at these cases, which means a better chance that someone out there will see something that sparks a memory, a connection, a lead that could finally bring answers. And here's my question for you, the one I need you to answer in the comments. If you were in Sarah's situation, if you felt watched and followed but had no proof, what would you do differently? How would you protect yourself? What steps would you take? Share your thoughts in the comments because this conversation could literally save someone's life. Someone out there might be feeling exactly what Sarah felt, and your advice could be the thing that keeps them safe. Sarah Mitchell left her home for 5 minutes on an ordinary Tuesday morning, and she was never seen again. Don't let her story be forgotten. Don't let her become just another statistic. Keep asking questions. Keep demanding answers. Keep watching. Because somewhere out there, the truth is waiting to be found. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell to enjoy more stories.